our recruiting efforts, the last time we did a recruitment for Camino, we did a radio ad. They're a little more expensive than newspaper print, but the return was dramatic. The newspaper print, I think you heard in some of the comments that folks talked about marketing and 412 and that they didn't think we marketed enough. One of the folks quoted the Stanley Camino News in particular, where we had directly advertised for that route, and they didn't see anything that was there. So newspaper print is, I think, one of those that people are only getting it because they're looking for it. So not to discount newspaper print, we'll still consider that. But I think on the radio, we saw almost twice as many applicants for the job just by that single radio ad. And we didn't advertise in the Everett Herald, which we had in the past. So I think there's some different avenues that we have to look in. Radio may be a portion just to draw awareness to the folks that we are enhancing our service and changes of service will be implemented in the first part of July. So you're right, there is a big public outreach effort. We're coordinating with Washington State ferries as well to make sure our information is available on the ferries. And as much effort we put into the public outreach to get to this point, we need to put that in the month of June to make sure they're aware of the changes.
Now, are you going to prepare a press release that consolidates the changes that you've made here, which indicated that you're going to do the outreach, but also to tell the transit story about the other changes that are been made or may be made even with our labor relations issues and with the potential of Saturday service? Start the conversation now. In other words, we're telling the public, prepare for this. This is what is in the middle. Then we get up to a date, this is when things are going to happen, and then we get to the point, this is the kickoff date for each of these things. Does that make sense to you about a press release so that you're telling the transit story?
Sure. Yeah, and I do like trying the fact in that, we haven't forgotten the Saturday discussion, so that's important for us to talk about changes that are coming and then again, continue that conversation on how we get to Saturday consumers.
Any other comments? Lance?
Just a question, Mike, do we make any special appeals to or encourage veterans, VFW, American Legion, to apply
For
positions here on operations?
We have through the base particularly. We do work with their fleet and family support system and make sure that they're aware of all our job opportunities so that they have outreach to the veterans that connect through the NAS Whidbey Island.
Okay.
I don't know if we've reached out to the VFW and American Legion directly, but it's worth considering.
Good, okay.
Any other comments?
I was just going to say, good job,
Yeah.
everybody that worked on this, and organizing all of those meetings for the public. I just did an outstanding job, so thank you.
Thank you. We have an
John and your
outstanding
staff.
team, outstanding operations team, and a couple of those individuals certainly stood out and put in a lot of extra hours. And so we wouldn't even be anywhere close to this point without all of those folks. And
I'll pass our thanks on to them. And I talked to a couple of different people who had attended different meetings, and they were very impressed with just the professionalism and how they thought how well thought out the whole presentation was.
I'll definitely pass that on to them, and we also thank Mike for that as well.
So one other comment that we want to tie with this as well is another piece of homework that we owe you is in moving or realigning the system here, one of the other things that we want to set in place is we will categorize all of our routes and call them, city, rural, or connector routes. And then we'll establish a benchmark system so that as we move forward in the future, we'll then have something to evaluate those routes by, look at opportunities in the future where we see underperforming or better performing routes and how we align or change our service in the future. So that'll be something that will, I think, one, give you and the public a little more transparency on how the ridership on the particular routes is working. And then give us a little more guidance on where we need to look at improvements to the system in the future.
Rick, you were
Well, my only comment was going to be in regards to when we get to looking at Saturday service or the possibility of Saturday service. I concur with the 411 is probably that is. On the weekends, I don't see that as being an issue. But I would like to make sure that we're not considering if we're going to do Saturday service, Camino needs to be involved.
Absolutely.
Maine, which is the other representatives, weekends are huge over there.
So, if there are no further comments, then I'd entertain a motion for resolution 2-17.
I will move to approve resolution number 2-17, authorizing implementation of the service improvement plan effective July 1, 2017.
Have a motion, and we have a second. A motion by Ms. Henderson, a second by Mr. Allen to approve resolution 2-17 as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Yay.
Moving on to business item number 2, discussion and possible action resolution 3-17, adopting new island transit drug and alcohol policy. Mr. Roman.
So, during our negotiations with the union and ETU 1576, we also updated our drug and alcohol policy. This will affect certainly not just represented, but non-represented as well, anybody that's in a safety-sensitive position. So these reflect changes to both federal guidance and other administrative changes. The policy had previously been part of our employee handbook. However, the revised version will be a standalone policy, so it will be, again, a policy unto itself. Again, the revised policy will apply to all covered employees, which includes both represented and non-represented. The union has agreed to this policy, so we have negotiated and reached agreement with them, and it will be referred to in the union contract that I'll talk to in a second once ratified. I recommend approval of the resolution, and like I said, largely it captures just administrative and negotiated changes with the union, and we're satisfied and pleased with the findings.
Okay. Any questions?
I had a comment. Number one, I think it's really well done. The only comment I had, and I wouldn't propose this change now, but maybe sometime in the future, I noticed you've used different language with, sometimes you used chemical dependency counselor, sometimes chemical dependency professional, or substance abuse counselor. There was a lot of different terms.
There's a purpose for those differences.
Oh, okay.
So there's, Robin can probably speak better to it, but there's a difference in, one of them is a professional
Right.
and the other is a counselor. So one of them will drive an outcome and a treatment plan, the other is a referral end.
And sometimes, like, counselors aren't necessarily licensed, and sometimes you really want a licensed person to be doing certain things. So if you're on top of that, then I agree with that. I just noticed they use different terms, and they do mean different things. They do. Yeah. Otherwise, I think it's a really good document.
Anything else up and down the line here? Hearing none, then entertain a motion to approve resolution 3-17.
I make a motion to approve 317.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen to approve resolution 317, second by Ms. Henderson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, carries unanimously. On to business. Item number 3, discussion and possible action, resolution 417, to approve the labor agreement between Island Transit and Lance.
There you go.
So I'm happy to report that earlier this week, ATU 1576 did vote and ratified to approve the contract that you have in front of you. This concludes almost 2 years of work to negotiations to reach an agreement, and I look forward to moving forward with this agreement and working with our union partners. I'm happy to report that at the end of the day, I think it was a good resolution. I'm satisfied with it, and I recommend approval of the resolution 417 between Island Transit, and that will be effective today for 3 years.
Any questions or comments?
I think it's great to get this finally done.
Lance, come on.
Good work around.
Well, I do have something after the vote is taken I'd like to read.
Thank you. Hearing no further questions or discussions, then I will entertain a motion to adopt resolution 417 to approve the labor agreement between Island Transit and the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1576, effective April 28, 2017, April 27, 2020.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made by Mr. Allen, second by Ms. Henderson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Lance?
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is from Kathleen, President of 1576. to the Board of Directors of Island Transit and to the Island Transit Management and staff. I apologize that I was unable to attend a board meeting today due to a previous engagement. I thought it was important that I express my appreciation to the Board of Directors, Island Transit Management, and members Mike Nordier, Robin Goldwing, Sean Harrison, all staff, and to Shannon Phillips, Island Transit Labor Attorney. Management, staff, representatives, and the union spent long hours negotiating a contract, which when put to a vote of the membership passed by an overwhelming majority, 98% in favor. At each negotiating session and every subsequent interaction, I must say that Island Transit showed nothing but the utmost respect, professionalism, and integrity. I believe that both the union and management worked to maintain a sense of humor while keeping in mind a goal that would benefit the union, management, and the entire agency. It is important to recognize this accomplishment, since ultimately this is the type of relationship unions and transit agencies everywhere strive for. On behalf of our new ATU family, we thank you all for your hard work. It's been a long time, I'll tell you. A lot of, just, all right, calm down. I mean, I wasn't in the negotiations, but on my side, there were times of gnashing teeth and all of that, and I think, I digress from this last paragraph, but I think that at times is a real dire necessity to strive to be collaborative, to not take things personally, to urge those that you may be advising, maybe we need to just stop for a while, to calm down. It's not the end of the world. Let's take a different look at this. Let's put this aside for a moment. Do other things. And I think fortunately in a lot of cases, that outlook does work. Not always. Sometimes people won't give up, I know in my experience all those years, I would have to, as much as I was upset, tell people, shh, 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 stop talking. Just calm down. Listen. Listen to what words are being said. And perhaps in that way, instead of talking, you'll be absorbing. So, I say a lot of that a lot of times. And I guess it gets redundant, but sometimes the words sink in and things get accomplished. And this was a long road, but what an exceptional staff here, all of the people. I'm very impressed with it, as the union is. So, on behalf of the ATU family, we thank you all for your hard work negotiating and ratifying this union contract. We look forward to the exciting future of Island Transit, where together we recognize the shared responsibility to the public we serve. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lance.
Yep.
Thank you for expressing your passion, and send our comments back to your board, your group. Civil tension is always a good thing. It helps us get to solutions, good solutions, as long as they're always civil.
That's right, that's right.
And I appreciate that. Any other comments? We'll move on to number 4. Thank you. This will be the discussion of possible action for resolution 5-17 to amend Island Transit Ordinance Directive bylaws.
All right, so I previously passed the bylaws to you with a few minor updates. First, our current bylaws do not include any guidance regarding ethics. Our existing ethics guidance, which does include guidance for the board, is included in our employee handbook, which isn't typically something that we provide to the board of directors. So it struck me as a little bit odd that we would contain the guidance for ethics in our employee handbook that isn't normally a distribution to board members. So So really, this is just moving that ethics guidance into our bylaws. We did steal the language that Island County RTPO had just used to incorporate ethics into theirs, and it references the state's RCW for municipal ethics guidance. So that and one other change, the only other administrative change that was in the bylaws was just a correction, or I should say adjustment to, at the end of the year, each member of the governing body or each governing body will nominate an individual. It had previously said that would be provided to the chairman of the board. We just said that would be provided to the corporation. So, other than that, there are no changes to the bylaws, and I recommend approval of the resolution.
Any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving resolution 5?
Well, we haven't done a motion yet, do we?
I'm asking for a
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry.
I move approval of resolution 517.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hanold to approve resolution 517, second by Ms. Henderson. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Item number 5, discussion and possible action regarding interlocal agreement with ICOM 911.
So for the board, we recently kicked off purchases of equipment to begin upgrading our radio system, which will include installation of transmitters on 6 antennas that ICOM owns or leases to operate the 911 system. Our current radio system is comprised of a single antenna on Lyman Hill and Sager Woolley. And as a result, you can understand that there are significant gaps in both Camino and Whidbey Island coverage. This purchase and installation is covered under a Washington State Department of Transportation grant. That's GCB 2531 Bravo. For ongoing operations and maintenance of the new equipment, the interlocal agreement you have in front of you was coordinated with ICOM, and we're one of 10 sharing agencies that use this system. So 911 fire departments, police department, law enforcement, and ourselves as well. Island Transit in the future will be responsible for 1/10 or lesser of the costs for annual operations and maintenance for those, like I said, those antennas and leasing. That comes out to about $4,500 a year is what they're currently spending. We currently have a lease for the single tower on Lyman Hill that's $39.96 annually. So that it's not quite budget neutral, but it's about a $500 increase over our current one. That lease at Lyman Hill will be terminated, and we will no longer use the antenna at Lyman Hill. So this is just part of our radio upgrade, and I recommend approval of the ILA that we coordinated with ICOM.
Okay, any questions, comments?
This is another one that's been a long time coming. And, hope we done.
You know, this whole package, this whole agenda today has had a lot of delayed actions that we're getting cleaned up, and the package is well put together. Thank you.
A lot of work. A lot of work.
We'll move along. We'll entertain a motion regarding item number 5.
I move approval of the interlocal agreement with ICOM 911.
Second.
Well, the motion by Mr. Handel to approve it, a second by Mr. Allen. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Going on to number 6, discussion with possible action, resolution 6-17 regarding paying off the limited sales tax general obligation bond 2013.
So I think this is another good news story. I'm going to turn it over to Paul to discuss it, but essentially this closes out our debt that we incurred back in 2014 to continue operations as Island Transit. So with that, I'll let Paul discuss the rest.
Good morning. Back in March, the Finance Committee met with the Island County Treasurer to review our investment opportunities and the best ways that we can get the greatest return on the reserves that we have. And we have this outstanding debt at about 2.65%, and we came to understand that the best bond investment opportunities were no greater than about 1 3/4%. So the first item that we thought was the best investments that we could make, the first item was really to pay off the bond where we were paying more than we were bringing in on our current monies. So we all came to the conclusion, made the recommendation at the last meeting to pay off that bond. And this is really continuation of that recommendation and action on that recommendation to just pay off approximately, I think it's $546,000. The savings in interest on doing that is about $13,000. So we thought that was really the best action, investment action that we could take.
And with that, I'd recommend approval of Resolution 617, which will pay off that limited sales tax general obligation bond for 2013.
That's a milestone.
Questions or
No,
comments?
I'm just, that's a comment, that's a celebratory
Yes, it is.
thing.
I have a question. So we pay off the bond, so the $26,000 a month that we're currently using to make the bond payment is going to go back into the reserve, correct?
That's right. That's right. You could use
So
it
we're gonna
you could
see
use it
on-
for other things. That's right.
Well, yeah, we're going to see on the monthly statement that $26,000 going back into, at a minimum, until that reserve is
Right.
built back
It
up.
doesn't, we don't increase our obligations in any other way, so that money in fact will come in and go into the reserves.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
Any other comments before I move on? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 6-17.
I move to approve resolution number 6-17 with enthusiasm.
Second. Second with enthusiasm.
Overwhelming.
I mean, that's
All right,
really
the motion
neat.
by Ms.
Yeah.
Anderson,
Your
second
chair.
by Mr. Allen. Any further discussion or comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. You know, and I have a comment after all of this. You know, when you look back at, not looking for fault, let me make that clear. When you look back over the past maybe 5 years, 3, 2, 1, whatever it is, there was a lot of print in the paper that was very, very negative about what's happening in this transit industry. The stuff that just happened today is probably headline information that nobody will ever really find out about, or I think they care about it when they get into the details of it. But, you know, the route adjustments, it's what we should be doing all the time, always looking for ways to make it more efficient, getting the most out of the dollar. And I really want to thank the staff and management in this place for the work you guys have done, at least in the time period that I've been involved in this. It's not time to really pat ourselves on the back. It's time to use what we have done as a guideline to keep improving going forward. So with that, thank you very much, all of you. I'll take one public comment.
You know how religiously I attend these meetings and my mindset in the past and what I've seen. And really, this is a milestone day. The things that are accomplished today, who would have ever thought that would happen in 3 years? I mean, 5 years ago it was bad, but all this has happened in 3 years. And to be able to pay off that bond, you know, short, that's really fantastic news. And I have to commend all of you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
And I'll allow a second comment because I know Gayle has something to say.
Well, hi, everybody. It's been a while. Hey, congrats on the union and everything else. My only thing is, with the service plan and that, please don't change the Route 6. Highway 20 is covered by so many different bus routes. Madrona Road is not. Madrona Way is not. That route is not serviced at all on anything else. And by far, and I take that bus. And so I'm on it all the way from Oak Harbor to Cookville. We get to where we're going. We get to the county. We get there. We just go the most beautiful route possible. And that is all anybody ever speaks about that bus. That is the most beautiful route in all of Whidbey Island. The most beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayle.
So I have a question of Mike. So with especially the payoff of the debt, can you let the newspapers know about that? Just write up a short press release somehow. I think that needs to be
The comment I want to make is that it was actually 3 years ago this month and I was sitting out there where Bruce is sitting. And I was a candidate at that time, and this transit agency was one of the reasons why I was a candidate for office. And I was sitting out there in the audience and listening to the financial statement where they were saying they didn't know where the money was or if they had money, and they were passing resolutions to borrow money for day-to-day expenses. And to see where we're at 3 years later is just a testimony to the resilience and the flexibility and the integrity of the staff that sits here right now. So thank you all.
Well, 2 million in the hole to 7 million plus, that's pretty damn good too.
3 years time.
Now, to be fair, we've been helped with an economy that's certainly
But
benefited us.
this is true, this is true, but it's definitely been, things have
But there's
been
a lot of hard work
managed,
done by these
things have been managed much, much better.
Yes.
And it is quite evident to anybody that's following along.
I think it's also a testament that this is a much happier place than it used to be 2 years ago, 3 years ago. People get along, I don't talk to anybody around anywhere in this building.
I would think that's a fair statement, but yes.
Yes.
That there's a whole collaborative effort to stay together and be a team. I love it.
And as Mike and I talked earlier when we had a conference before this meeting, part of what has helped us is this economic bubble that we've experienced. And currently, the big projects on the basin and Oak Harbor, et cetera, and the low gas prices have definitely helped our recovery. At the same time, we have to look about when the bubble pops, because these cycles always go back and forth. And so the policies that we have and the culture that we create has to carry us not only through the good times, but to prepare for the tougher times too. And I think we're in a better position now to position ourselves for the tougher times. And, you know, we really are at the peak of this bubble, I believe, everything that I read. And we'll just see what happens when fuel prices go up and people don't spend as much for taxes.
Well, and I think that fits. I mean, it's certainly in our nature to, pessimistically plan for the future and be pleasantly surprised when it turns out.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, any more comments before we move along for the Executive Director's report? Hearing no comments, Executive Director's report.
So a few things to update you on. So first I'll start with some employee recognition. This last month we had 2 employees with over 20 years of service, Ricky Horning and Jim Walker, and I certainly like to commend them for their efforts. Certainly in the 20 plus years individually, 45 years collectively that they've been here, they've certainly seen a lot of successes and been really the genesis of many of those successes. Probably the best news outside of the service improvement plan and the union contract that we just approved was we also got news this week from Washington State Department of Grant on our consolidated grants. Island Transit did very well with WashDOT approving our operating grant for the county connectors. Now collectively 1 grant vice the 2 separate grants previously. Mobility management staffing position, 2 heavy duty, 7 medium duty, and 5 light duty buses. Additionally, there's a van pool grant request that may receive funding at a later date as WashDOT considers a separate VIP van pool grant request that's out there as well. So we'll get some vans, we just don't know what that answer is yet. This will allow us to now proceed with the budget amendment next month that reflects grants and operating changes recommended in the service improvement plan, as well as plan for when we'll be able to start to restore Saturday service. I would say that of the 10 grants that we submitted, Meg and the team put a lot of effort into writing those, but to have, frankly, our 6 largest grants approved speaks very highly of the folks who put effort into that grant process. So thanks to Meg and the team for doing that.
Thank you. That should be in your press release too.
So Washington State Transit Association legislative update. Not a lot here, just last week the Senate approved their version of the transportation budget for 2017 and 19. This was the last piece for the transportation budget that had already been approved by the House. And with both chambers having passed it, that allowed WashDOT to then release their consolidated grant program. The regular session certainly has ended and now moved into special session. The remainder of the special session I don't anticipate will have much impact on transit. The transportation budget's already approved. The two bills that were out there that had an impact on us were in regards to the bicycle racks on the front of the bus, and Governor Inslee has already signed that one, as well as a job order contracting option for transit agencies, and again, Governor Inslee has already signed that one as well. So the remainder of the budget will largely be focused on certainly education, tax initiatives to support the operating budget for the city. I've really talked about Everett Community College. Pat Cisneros, which is the Vice President of College Services, I think it was significant that he attended our community outreach meeting in Camino, so we were happy to have him there, and certainly glad to have him involved in the process. On the Corridor Sketch Initiative, which is another WashDOT initiative looking at the individual segments of the state highway system, they had a second meeting and we provided some inputs to that. So it's an integrated process, and the intent for WashDOT is to be able to have a plan, a long-term plan for the highway sections that's inclusive of local and regional interests, and not just a state plan that may be at odds with ours. So I think that's important, and we certainly provided input in the folder that was being passed around, and I think you'll see that printout of the input that has been coordinated. On vehicle acquisitions, our first 4 medium-duty buses looks like they are on schedule at the Glavel factory in Indiana. Ken and I will head out there next week to do part of our, Buy America inspection for the vehicle production, and also make sure that it's as we expected for spec before we head out with the next 9 vehicles and get them in the production line. So that'll be good, and we expect those to be delivered the latter part of May. So they'll be the first 4 buses coming to us.
While you're on that topic, do you want to speak to the point of how you're laddering the delivery of these buses as we discussed earlier?
Yeah, so one of the, the good news is that, between the grants that we already had in place and the grants that Washington State Department of Transportation just afforded us, that will allow us to replace, 32 of our 60 buses. So that's great news, because most of our buses, with the exception of our heavy-duty buses, are already beyond the recommended service life. They maintain and continue to operate safely, but we spend more time and money maintaining those vehicles because they are aging. So the great news is we got an opportunity to refresh the fleet, and we'll continue to move forward that. The bad news is, those for the light and medium-duty vehicles, they typically are expected to last 5 to 7 years. So that bad news is, in 5 to 7 years, if we were to buy them all at once, we have another 30 buses that we'd be expecting to replace in 5 to 7 years. So what we're interested in doing is kind of spreading that production line out. We'll get 4 certainly in May. We expect the remainder of the 9 probably through the end of this year. The grants that we just talked about from Washington State Department of Transportation, we'll look at when we sequence those as well, so that we can deliver those buses and spread the wealth over several years, instead of clumping them all together and then incurring a debt in 5 to 7 years that we, as we talked about, we don't know what the economy looks like in 5 to 7 years. And I would hate to be in a place where the economy takes a downturn and we're operating vehicles that are, again, beyond their service life and don't have an option.
Thank you.
We also have 5 light-duty buses that we're processing for completion milestones with Goshen. And again, as we bring these vehicles in, these are replacement vehicles, so we're still looking at the latter part of 2017 for a surplus or auction to dispose of those vehicles. On a note on revenue, we are looking at advertising. We've had a couple of initial conversations to look at opportunities to explore advertising on buses and potentially some bus shelters. We've talked a little bit with Sound Publishing. We're not at the point where we're looking at an RFP or proposal yet, but we're still kind of doing the exploratory discovery stages of what their interest and capabilities are. And we'll meet with Kevin and Graves and discuss some of those options in May here. So I look forward to that as an opportunity to look at another source of revenue as well. Our secondary access project, last week we held the pre-construction meeting for the completion of it with Trimax. This Monday they kicked off their construction efforts. We've been coordinating with the neighboring tree farm regarding access and preservation of the trees along their existing fence line. And weather permitting, they should be paving right now as we speak for that secondary access. So we expect that project to wrap up by the middle of next week if weather holds out. And but in all cases, probably complete within a week and a half or two. I briefly mentioned NAS Whidbey Island service earlier, but we've coordinated with base personnel to explore options for future commuter service to the base to assist with traffic congestion and provide access to Oak Harbor for Navy personnel. We've largely resolved the concerns for bus and operator access. Now we're just looking at, we're waiting some proposals from the Navy, and maybe the best times would be to move personnel onto the base. So we'll continue these discussions. We're not looking at those in July. Again, this is just a future consideration at this point, but I think it's good news that we're making progress in looking at options that will work for both of us. Another shout out, regional transit coordination. Lou Short coordinated a second meeting with representatives from Community Transit, Skagit Transit, Everett Transit to discuss public outreach techniques, customer relations, and construction impacts in the Everett area. This forum has been a good tool to enable staff-to-staff coordination and spread of best practices, and I applaud Lou on her initiative. It's really been her thought from start to finish, and she's got a number of agencies that are interested in continuing this discussion, so I look forward to it. We're also looking at a regional transit coordination meeting later this year, at a little bigger level with community transit, Skagit Transit, and Whatcom to discuss some of the regional overlap that we see, particularly in Skagit and Snohomish County. And I think there's interest in renewing those conversations. They've been held in the past, and I think there's been some changes in leadership in a number of places, both WashDOT here. Community as well, that will allow us to at least refresh those discussions and see if there's opportunities for changes or better alignment of services in the future. Maintenance internship, Skagit Valley Community College. So we're approximately halfway through a 6 to 7 week internship program with one student. The internship program consists of about 1 8-hour day a week, which is Fridays in this case, where the intern shadows one of our maintenance journeymen. The student lives in Coupeville, which makes the internship kind of a benefit for both of us, and that the only other opportunity for internship was probably off-island for him. So the fact that we could help Skagit Valley Community College out, we get somebody that gets a little bit of exposure to island transit. It's another form of community engagement, so I think it's a win-win all the way around. And outside of some upcoming dates, that's what I had for you for an update this morning. Thank you.
Eagle here of us?
Yes, yeah, we did. You're right, we had a deer strike and an eagle was in the road picking up a carcass or something and hit the right side of the bus.
Red-tailed hawk fly into my grill. Coming out of Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Nortier.
Oh, they're not friends.
Finance manager report. Excuse me, sorry, Lance.
That's okay, that's right. Mike, I want to ask you, number 4 there, I think you've heard me say this before, and maybe it's a matter of where to store. But I heard you say earlier at one point, we just don't have any extra buses. But this auction, Circle is getting rid of a few. Is there any possibility that we could find some room to keep a couple of those buses or vehicles that maintain and operate, as you said, just fine, they're just beyond their life expectancy for situations that might occur?
Well, we are going to look at probably a couple to put in contingency reserves, not to operate as extra buses or extra routes, but to give us, right now we're running pretty tight on a daily basis. If we're not using every bus that we have that's outside of preventive maintenance, we're pretty close to that. So we are going to look at a select few, but these are replacement vehicles through the grant process, so we don't really have the entitlement to keep them. So we can keep a select few and put them in contingency, we just can't continue to operate them at the same.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Contingency, by that you mean, should 1 or 2 of them break down, or God forbid be involved in an accident where they're off the road, that we could pull them out and use them under those circumstances?
Right.
Okay. And the last one I had was on the advertising. And I know that, that can be additional income and stuff, but please, the one part of those bus advertising is where they do those complete bus wraps. Oh my God, I hate that. and I know there's a lot of money in that. But
You say that, Lance, but 2 years ago, we did an RFP, and we didn't get any takers, because really within Island County, we just don't have the exposure that a lot of those advertising agencies
Yeah,
are.
no, I understand that. Yeah, I know. It's
Yes,
a lot,
RFP.
Everett and Seattle, and sure, there are many more eyes are upon them, but,
Our initial thoughts are to look at internal advertising in the buses,
yeah.
bus shelters, and really to start it as a pilot to see what's successful before we can venture into something that we don't understand. So.
I see. Good, thanks, good report.
Any other comments before we move on with the finance manager? Let's move on with the financial manager.
Okay, so I'll be reporting the finances for the period ending March 2017. First slide talks about March cash sources. Our sales tax revenue was better than expected for the month of March. Also, we had 2 months worth of contract reimbursements, both January and February. We also got a large reimbursement for our route match software that we installed, and we received reimbursement for fuel usage. So all of those show up on the statement that was provided a week ago.
Can you go back, because I did have a question on this slide.
Okay.
The miscellaneous revenue, is that, because we're way ahead of what we projected, is that higher because that reimbursement you just mentioned?
Fuel reimbursements that we're now getting. I think we budgeted about 50,000 for the
Yeah.
year,
And we're at
and
66.
we're ahead of that.
That's why I was wondering where the extra came from, so that's, okay, thank you.
Mostly from the fuel refunds, but there are other smaller miscellaneous items that we've received.
Okay.
Some income as well. Just wanted to talk about March sales tax and where we are. The red line is our actuals, which have been exceeding our budgeted numbers. You can also see the numbers there, what we budgeted and what we actually received. And then the green line shows the percent of actual over budget. So in March, we did very well. We were 17% more than what we had budgeted. So that's really good news. And you can see in contrast to the month before, which was about 3%.
So if you look at those deltas, I mean, between the month of January, where it's significantly higher than what we expected, and really for March, again, both those. If you look at that across the year, we had looked at the construction projects and the benefit that we would see, and we had predicted somewhere between $650,000 to $800,000. It's certainly going to be more than that as we look across the year. That coupled along with our better understanding from the Department of Revenue of how to peel back the sales tax and look at that, we'll be able to better, I think, forecast in 2018 our sales tax and revenues. This year we intentionally were conservative to make sure that we didn't overshoot, but I think for 2018 we'll have a much better picture of assuming the economy continues in the same direction.
So for the month of March, we were $108,000 ahead of budget. For the year so far, 232 ahead of budget, or about 2.5%, if we consider that we would only get the budgeted amounts for the remainder of the year. Breaking out the various types of revenue. First of all, we have operating grant contract revenue, and we can see the sources of that: Tri-County Connector, EverConnector, paratransit, and equalization. Those were the dollar amounts we received in March. Route match, we got a reimbursement for $195,000, and miscellaneous revenue, fuel tax refund was a big part of that. If we look at the uses of cash, pretty standard, mostly just payroll, bond payback, and we had a little bit of a capital grant expenditure for Parker Road construction at $54.34. If we look at our reserve breakouts, we continue to fund our operating grant to obtain 2 months of, you might say, emergency reserves. That was one of our assigned areas, assigned operating. and we continue to fund our bus, van, and support vehicle funds. Our other capital, you see a large funding amount there. That was really our reimbursement for the route match. We're putting it back into the fund so that we can use it again for our radio repeater grant. And then, as you can see, our operating cash is at about 2.5 million. After we pay off the bond, that'll drop to about 2 million, but it's still well above that 1 month's reserve that we're holding to operate each month, which we saw in the previous slide was around $800,000. If we look at it graphically, we can again see our reserves, and we're still improving each month. There's a big increase in the top blue, which is again taking that route match money and putting it back into the fund for later, for future use. And our other funds, we continue to grow them for good reason. For example, the bus reserve, we're going to need that money to purchase our buses that we've ordered and the future buses that we plan to order with our new grants. Our reserve investments, on April 17th, we purchased a $1 million bond on recommendation by the finance committees. It's a Farmer Mac bond, which is a institution of the Farm Credit System. It's federally insured. It's our safest investment that we could buy, and it was upon recommendation by the Allen County Treasurer. Yields 1.74. We get semi-annual payments. It's convertible in 1 year, which means that they could basically terminate the bond if interest rates drop. But we would yield more if they do that. It matures in 3 years, so that's the total term, maturing at 4, 6, and 20. And of course, we could sell that at any time in the marketplace if we really needed to. So we felt that was the best available investment to try and diversify the reserves that we currently have. Looking at budget actual information, the budget actual report, our target, of course, we're 3 months in, 25% would be our target. And we can see that our small items like interest, we've shifted our investment strategy a little bit, so we're doing better in that regard. And as was previously mentioned, our miscellaneous is doing much better than we anticipated, mostly due to those fuel refunds. State operating grants are pretty much on target. Capital grants are, of course, we haven't gotten revenues because we haven't really spent the money yet, so we're waiting for the buses to arrive before we spend the money and then receive reimbursement. So that's under target. We look at the expense side, salary and wages are pretty much on target. Our tools and supplies and services are a little bit below budget, but part of that, I think, like in tools and supplies, it relates to fuel, which has been lower than what was budgeted. I budgeted $3.50 a gallon. Of course, fuel right now is $2.50 per gallon, but still well under budget. Insurance, we've already paid that off, so we've pretty much fulfilled that budget item. And of course, again, capital, we are just waiting for our items to arrive, projects to finish before we'll pay out on those. And the bond, of course, is right on target because that's following the bond payment schedule. And it will disappear after this month. Other significant data, ridership was about 72,500. It's up 7,500 from last month and down 6,200 from a year before. We saw really significant gains almost across the board. And I think it's partly due to the large decreases we saw the month before. So it was really a return to what we were seeing closer to January. Fuel costs are up. about 18% from last month and 46% from a year ago. So we're seeing uptick in fuel prices. Per gallon, diesel is actually down a little bit, but our unleaded was up about 3% per gallon. And graphically, we can see what the total fuel cost, where it is, and you can see the uptick in March. It takes us back to almost July of 2015 as to what our cost is for fuel. And if we look at it per gallon, you can see upswing in March for unleaded, and diesel has actually dropped a little bit, but on the whole, the prices have gone up. And just looking at it in perspective from back 15 years, you can see where fuel is. Unleaded seems to really be jumping. There's actually an interesting spread between unleaded and diesel. And you can see over the last 15-year history that where the price of fuel is climbing, and we're probably like right in the middle of that road as to where it could go versus where it was. And that's it. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you, Paul.